Hi, everybody. Rebecca Nelson with you once again, coming to you for another fantastic virtual tasting with Becker Vineyards. Tonight, we're doing another library wine, a wine that's no longer available in our main tasting room, and we've kind of squirreled some away down in our cellar, and Dr. Becker was gracious enough to let us let it go and let everybody kind of partake in this. So tonight, we have the 2015 Culinaria, and with us tonight, we have both Dr. Richard Becker and Dr. Joe Becker. We also have our winemaker, Jon Leahy. We have Crystal Wetz is with us as well, and she's the one who's always kind of behind the scenes for these virtual tastings, and we've coaxed her out from behind the curtain to be with us tonight. And I'm going to hang out with you all for the duration of the tasting as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Jon and the Doctors Becker to get us all started. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, Rebecca. That was a wonderful intro. And I hope to see many wonderful comments from your parents streaming on here.
I'm sure.
Exactly. And Crystal, don't worry. I'm not going to ask you any hard questions about the wine, just about how we made it.
Okay. Oh, perfect. I know all about it.
Yeah. So with that, Dr. Richard and Dr. Joe, would you lead us off with a few words?
I think Joe and I will both talk about 6 months of being into this pandemic, and now it's very much come to our front door, our friends, the people we know and work with in San Antonio, and this has always been introduced as this 30 minutes is 30 minutes of escape from the horrors and hardship of that. And Joe, would you like to add something to that?
No, just that we're thinking about those who are out there, those that can't watch this, those that are having to work around the clock, trying on the front lines, trying to battle this pandemic.
I'd like to give them all a taste of wine, if I could, whenever it's appropriate. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, with those, we'll lead into 30 minutes of discussing one of the better library finds we've had in a while, I think. Though there are quite a few of them down there, I was really, really happy when I pulled the cork on this and decanted it about an hour ago. Actually, it was about an hour and 20 minutes ago. So I want everybody to right away, if you've got it in your glass, go ahead and give it a swirl, a sniff, and a taste. And so some of the deeper perfumes I'm getting off the top of that are really interesting. One of the things I've noticed, which is indicative of wines that have been bottled for a few years, is that it's a little closed in, so you got to give it a few swirls and get some air on there. So before we get into the guts of what the Culinaria 2015 is made from, so I want to go through the whole panel. Crystal, since you got a couple sips, let's start with you. What are you getting?
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Jon.
Called the hot seat for a reason.
I really like this wine. I started here at the Main Street location about 2 years ago, and we had this in our little interrogation room area in our back stock, and we had opened it one evening just to try it out. And I remembered it from when I very first started, and we have the Culinaria every year, and this is just a really great one. I get some lighter fruits because it's not super heavy wine. This is kind of like medium, but maybe a little bit of raspberry in there. It's really nice.
It is indeed. Rebecca, you want to chime in? What are you getting out of there?
Sure. I'm getting a lot of interesting sort of floral notes on the nose, but one of the things that I really am liking on the palate is I'm getting some plum up front, almost like some red plum, and then I get a nice pepper finish on it as well that I am really liking, and that's kind of really coming out as this has decanted and opened up. And those are things that I'm, with a 2015 wine, one that hasn't been opened in quite some time. It's really nice to see these different flavors kind of really showing themselves.
Yep, right. So Joe, what are you getting on your first impressions of the wine?
It's interesting compared to the 18 that we had the other night. I'm getting a little spice on the back palate on
Yep.
five at six, and the middle palate is still very rich, very full mouthfeel.
And Doc?
And so, John, you're asking about how Culinaria began and
Yes.
where the name came from. And it's interesting. It started out as the New World Wine and Food Festival. And then it was called sort of the Day of the Dead Wine Festival. And we thought that was not very cheery. And so
Why would that not be very cheery?
I thought, let's say that. So I would say about 15 years ago, Suzanne and Ginger, two of the best people I've ever known in the food and wine industry who really operate Culinaria. Been great friends to us and to everybody in food and wine in this part of the world. They said, let's change the name. And the name Culinaria emerged, and the wonderful logo was produced. It actually won a national prize. And then I said, well, why don't we make some wine? And I'll make it, and we'll make a wine each year for Culinaria. And so that's where this began. And as Joe said the other night, it was originally our attempt to make a Merlot Cab Franc blend, but it's now evolved, I think, into just a splendid wine. And I think this wine won some gold medals in San Francisco. Is that right, John?
Yeah, it did. It did not get a double gold, but it did get a couple silvers and a gold. So, yeah. But the other thing, I think we need to have a retro Day of the Dead Culinaria event, because Day of the Dead is absolutely a fantastic celebration. It's happy. Those parades are great. I mean, come on, look at all the makeup you could put on.
I don't think.
Yeah. So I absolutely, and I tie my tongue every time I try to say Dia de los Muertos. I never get it right. So like Day of the Dead, I'm safe saying that. But yeah, so this wine, I wanted to point out too, in case somebody else has noticed it. When I first put it into the glass, when I first took a sniff, I actually got just a hint of the ethyl acetate. So, or what if it was very well combined in there, so it's not going to be a dominant smell. So for those of you, after I say ethyl acetate, somebody's going to ask, and I will explain it. That ethyl
That's actually exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, well then you're on the hot seat for the next go round.
No, I'm just kidding. Don't do it.
Don't do it. But the ethyl acetate is by itself can smell an awful lot like nail polish remover. In wine, in a small amount, when it combines in there, it gives this very, very interesting, almost powdery perfume, very deep edge to it. And that's because it's been in a fairly oxygen-free environment for a number of years in the bottle. You'll get a little tiny hint.
John, when you're adding nail polish remover to our wine, what do you have a favorite brand? Or I mean, do you go to Costco, or how do you?
No, Revlon. I'm a Revlon guy all the way.
It's really good for coronavirus.
We're gonna get a lot
of Stop. So beyond that, the reason I wanted to mention that is because a lot of older wines, and especially if you're not familiar with opening bottles that are 10, 12, 15, 20 years old, you're going to get a little bit of that. And that's why we really encourage people to decant the wine after a few years in bottle. Put it in the decanter. You can pop it in the refrigerator after you decant it, cover it, keep it in there for 45 minutes, take it out, let it warm up a little bit, and then try it. You're going to have a remarkable experience. That fruit is really going to come forward once it gets a little air in there. So that was all I wanted to say, besides the nail polish remover comment. So back to, though, Crystal, since you were going to talk about the ethyl acetate and the intricate differences between amyl acetate and ethyl acetate in the wine. No, I thought I'd make it easier.
You got this.
Your nails.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What do you get? So are you noticing a difference now that it's been opening up at all? What do you've had a couple of tastes. What do you think on the back of the palate after you finish? What do you get?
Me?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you.
Actually, something that I was going to mention, actually on the nose right now, and I might be losing my mind, but I get a little bit of like bell pepper on the nose right now.
Nope, you're not losing your mind at all.
That's that Cab Franc that I love.
Here comes the peanut gallery. Come on in.
It's really good.
Good. So Rebecca and your Cab Franc. So you've tasted it a couple of times. I want to get back into it.
Yeah, well, and I mean, Did you say what all is in this yet, John? There's
I'm
so
going
much.
to.
The Culinaria blends are always just phenomenal. They have so many things in them, and this one was really different. And I have always enjoyed this 15, and I think it's because it has a large chunk of Zinfandel and Cabernet Franc in this, and then it's also, of course, got Merlot, Barbera, and some Petit Verdot. So this is definitely a heavier Culinaria. It was a very full-bodied Culinaria that we did, and
So if you're gonna read from the prompt, do this right to the side of the camera, and then it won't look like you're looking down.
it's the bottle.
Right. Yeah, no, we did. So, and back to Doc and Joe's point from earlier in the week about the Culinaria blend having been a Cab Franc Merlot blend. We do a Cab Franc Merlot blend at the winery now, and that is, to me, it's an homage to one of my favorite French wines. But the use of Cab Franc in here was kind of like, I just tried it in. There is no other that I'm aware of, any other commercial line that does a Zin and Cab Franc blend. It kind of went out on the edge there. And every year I do a Culinaria blend, everybody looks at me in the tasting on Saturday and like, so what is in here? But Doc, would you like to comment? So I'm going to read off the vineyards that we dealt with and just give a brief on that, because the Becker vineyards, of course, the Peters Prairie. You know, we've never gone into this in previous broadcasts, the history behind Peters Prairie. Would you guys like to illuminate us on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, Peters Prairie is named for a Civil War Confederate a jailer in Brady, who named Peters, who brought I guess they were all, I think, black inmates in the jail, halfway between Brady and Mason, were camp areas, and had them work during the day on some farming projects there, and it became known as Peters Prairie. And that's where the name comes from. And the vineyard was planted by a wonderful couple from California, I guess about 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and we bought the grape, began buying grapes from them. Mostly bought the vineyard. I think the real strong suit was the Barbera, and the great story about Barbera is that they called us one evening and said, "There's 20 tons of Barbera en route right now to your winery." He said, I want you to make it into wine. But by me, he meant our winemaking team. He said, I like your wine. I don't like what's happening to my fruit. And I said, well, you know, we weren't planning for this. We didn't know about it. I called Brett and we made it happen. And we made some fabulous Barbera.
My heart goes out to Brett every once in a while. He gets crunched during harvest a little bit.
What year was that, Brett? John, do you remember? Were you there when that happened?
No, that was pre-2012. But I heard the story, and I guess it wasn't that many years prior to that. I think it had to be in mid-2000s, because that's what I think. Very adamant about. We have a better plan now. We know what's coming in.
Not always.
Yeah, not always. Yeah, hence Jet's Dolcetto the first year.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So the Peters Prairie portion of that is the Barbera. See right now, Rebecca, what I'm doing here. Can you see? Yeah. So the Peters Prairie is the Barbera is 15%, and then the Diamante Doble Vineyards Merlot is 17%, and the Cooper Vineyards Cabernet Franc is 17%. So Cooper's Vineyard is a vineyard that we used to deal with. Ms. Cooper passed away, and then her daughter took over. But beyond that, Doc, when was the first year that you all dealt with Cooper's Vineyard?
Gosh, I'm thinking, I guess maybe 2005 or 6 or 7, somewhere. I'm not sure exactly, but about that time. But, you know, I think it's important. The translation of Diamante Doble means, what year did you graduate from Tech in Spanish? Isn't that right?
You gotta wonder, right? Now we get Rachel on here.
Jet watching this broadcast?
What?
Is Jet watching this broadcast?
Oh yeah, Jet's on the broadcast. I just saw a little comment from him. I'm sure he's getting ready to type something up. So he's not one to let a challenge go. Well, in this particular one, so in 2015, you all had mentioned, and actually in 2014 had mentioned that Culinaria had been kind of a Cab Franc Merlot and deal. And we had taken the 2012 Cab Franc and used all of it to make that wonderful single vintage bottling of Cab Franc.
You bet.
Of which I know there are 6 bottles left. Rebecca.
Where?
Here.
Yeah, no, I'm telling her so she doesn't come. But so in 2015, I decided to start with that before we were making the Cheval Noir, which is our Cab Franc Merlot blend. I tried that. It wasn't exactly everything I wanted it to be. So then I started experimenting with the Zinfandel in there, that portion of it. And then the Barbera, of course, came in because I love the way Barbera in a smaller amount mutes a lot of tannin. It's very acidic and it wraps things around and has such a beautiful cherry-esque nose to it that and the smoothness on the palate that Barbera is used to basically just kind of smooth all of the rough edges out, if you will. So that's how that blend came about. Was starting with kind of a reflection on what the first Culinaria wines were, and going forward with the idea that our wines expanded, so is the food options and all of the wonderful chefs and the nouveau cuisine that they've brought into San Antonio area. So we tried to make a wine that kind of hit the broad palate, if you will. So that was the.
No, John, I just Googled this, and that Diamante Doble means what year were you supposed to graduate from Tech?
Well, I'm pretty sure that's now definitely typing a comment. Doc,
Or why didn't you graduate from Tech? No,
why
I'm sorry.
did you graduate from Tech? Well, there are a lot of good institutions in this state that have produced a lot of good people. And one of my favorite things is the rivalry between those institutions.
Yes, I think there may be some.
Now, John,
yeah, yes.
I know when I first started, the 2012 Culinaria was the first vintage that I got to try. And we completely sold out of that vintage. We didn't even grab any to put in the cellar. And I know we used to make a lot less. And over the last few years, you've made more because we sell out of it so quickly. Right. So one of the things I want to remind everybody is, and now I'm going to tell a story on my mom because I know they're watching, so this will be great. So they're wine club members, of course. So when we sent the 2012 Culinaria out, my mom called me about 3 days after she got the shipment and said, that Culinaria is amazing. Send me 3 more bottles. So I rang her up, shipped her 3 more bottles. And about a month later, she calls and she says, you know what? Just send me a case of that Culinaria. I just absolutely love it. So I sent her a case. And then a couple months later, it rolls around and now we're at maybe the beginning of November. And she calls back and she says, I need another case of the Culinaria. And we had already sold out of it that year. That's how quickly we used to sell out because we just didn't make very much of it. And I had to tell my own mother that there was no more wine for her. So she said she had bought the case and thought she was going to do really great and save it to give to people for Christmas. But then she drank it all herself instead.
Nice. Well, see, that's my favorite kind of wine customer.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
The tree, right.
So I always remind everybody, know yourself. Make sure you're buying enough wine, not just for you, but also for you in the future. And if you are nice enough to share it with anybody, make sure you buy enough for that as well.
Oh, definitely.
Shout out to Kate.
I'm sorry, what?
Shout out to Kate Nelson.
Yes, shout out to her. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so
Nelson is a drinking problem. Is what? Yeah.
Not a problem, sir. It's a solution.
Who was it that said sometimes I cook with wine and it even goes in the food? or I cook with wine sometimes it even goes in the food. So you just got a comment from a lady up in Iowa, a name of Kate Nelson, saying, so now I'm going to hear you have some hidden away. Well, yes, Rebecca's mom, I actually do. Okay, so of the Culinarias, of the 15 and the 18, 2 different creatures, do you guys find any similarities, or are they completely different? We'll start with you, Doc, and Joe. What do you think? Palate memory.
I think this is wonderfully smooth, beautiful wine. And somehow for me, the Zinfandel expression in this is really nice.
Yeah.
And I would think it'd be more than 36%, but it's just somehow the other grapes support it well, and this is a beautiful wine.
And it was very prominent on in the 18, and it was even a lower percentage, and that may just be the Zinfandel of this is from. Did you say it's from Drew's Vineyard?
No, the Zin is from Jet.
Yeah. Okay.
Jet Wilmot. Yeah, from Diamante Doble. So the Barbera in this particular one is from Peter's Prairie. So the newer one had the Barbera from Drew's Vineyard. So similar areas, but two completely different fruits, certainly. Yeah. So this one, I've found between tasting the 18, and I really like the brightness of the 18 because it's a much newer wine. But I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised on how well this is aged. And I think, to be honest with you, if you have any in your cellar, you want to hold on to it. I don't see any reason this isn't going to age another 5 to 10 years without a problem. I think it'll turn into a much more mature wine. Certainly some of the fruit will probably mute over the age, but that maturity and that voluptuousness is still going to be there.
John, was this the same combination of French and American oak that you used on the 18?
No, it was not. Joe, we unfortunately in 2015, we had a rather sparse amount of French oak. Apparently the orders didn't get put in on time. I didn't have a barrel budget in 2015, Joe. Actually, 2015 was the first time we increased. But 2015 was also the demarcation where we started shifting from the A&K American oak to the Demptos oak on the American side. So of this, the Zinfandel, the Cab Franc, and the Petit Verdot all saw American oak. The Barbera was in 1 and 2 year old French oak, and then American oak after that. So this is almost all American oak.
Okay.
And honestly, you could just say this is American oak, and it is a great example of what American oak can do for a wine. For years in our industry, we were confused about what American oak and how to treat it and how to use it for red winemaking. And it was the wonderful monk winemaker, Justin, from,
Abilene, Texas. No.
Sorry, yeah, right. No, who absolutely brilliantly came forward with the idea. You've got to age those staves 36 months. You've got to toast them. You've got to do this stuff, and it becomes this beautiful, much more sweet character on the oak instead of a savory character like the French oak. So
John, you told me something. It was probably about 6 months ago, and it was about like the grain. Between the difference between like French and American and like the tighter and looser grain, and how like one was meant to age for longer. And I think people would probably find that really interesting. So if you can explain that a little bit.
Yep. The primary difference in sensory is French oak tends to be much more savory. We get more savory notes, like some of the deeper toasted notes of coffee, things like that, where American oak tends to be a slightly sweeter, driven. It does not add sugar. That's not what I'm saying, just sweeter on the palate, the lighter, sweeter edge, which we tend to get much more vanilla or vanillin edges from American oak. The grain tightness, certainly the tightest American grained oak is very similar to a medium grained French oak. So our tightest grain cannot be as tight as the French. So the French grain is, a tight grain is usually between 18 and 22 lines per inch on the grain. Where a tight American oak is about 12 to 15 lines per inch. And some of our American oaks a little less than that. So basically the idea, you want to use French oak, tight grained oak for long-term aging, American oak or loose grained oak for short-term aging to pick up those same flavors.
So John, but you did ask me about the wine, and I want to say the reason, in my opinion, this wine won gold medal in San Francisco wine competition is the richness and the depth of the fruit on the palate.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a simple wine, and
No.
it's this blend that you've made, I think, is terrific.
Yeah, so we got a question here. Somebody said, what do French oak barrels run these days? The same for American oak. So nope, they're more expensive than American oak. French oak starts at about $900 a barrel and goes up to about $2,000 a barrel. American oak starts around $400 and goes up to $700. Depends on all sorts of different factors in there, but that's a good price range for that.
What about oak from Waco, John?
Oak from Waco would be a very interesting addition. Yeah. I am gonna
Use that
turn the
for
broadcast off now, Doc. Okay.
Hey, Dr. Pepper there. Don't forget that.
John, I'm sorry, we've been pre-gaming too much.
Yeah. You have been pre-game. That's awesome. So somebody just said, the person who asked, oh, Trish, I'm sorry, Trish, I didn't see the name when the question went by. She goes, ouch, poor Richard for the pricing on the Trish, do not feel sorry for him. He's the one who's demanding the quality. So. Okay, so I'm getting to my favorite point of the broadcast. Since I haven't had anything to eat in 6 days, I want to start with, or maybe 6 hours. It all blends together.
Bobby told me today that you were cleansing.
It's not.
I don't know how you. Every time I'm shocked that you do it. It's crazy.
It's the start of harvest, so I have to start juicing.
Food is such a privilege.
Food is, but keep your nose clear is what I have to do. So, so Crystal, what food would you pair with this wine?
Funny you should ask. I was thinking about this because this was the only question I was 100% positive you were going to ask me.
Absolutely.
Everything else was just kind of thrown at me, but I was thinking tamales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was, as the bell pepper kind of gives me a little bit of like a tamales vibe.
Sounds good.
Tamales sound very, very good. I bet you could pair with some really good mole sauce too. I bet that would go very well. So you're making me hungry, Crystal. I'm gonna go right on to Rebecca. Rebecca, what would you pair with this?
A couple different things. I was thinking an eggplant lasagna would be really good with this. Mm-hmm. Or my go-to is always going to be duck, John. That's always going to be my go-to. But I think an eggplant lasagna would be really, really good with it.
Okay, but I'm going to tell this story on you and Doc both. So on our wine club cruise last November, we had the absolute privilege of going to a beautiful restaurant that Doc insisted that we go to for lunch. And it's a restaurant that he had visited before in the past. And we get to this place, and no matter how well dressed I am in France, I always feel like I'm underdone. No, this is not a stereotypical, the French were, very hoity-toity. That we're not the.
I don't think that's just in France, John.
What? I don't think that's not just in France. Hey, I didn't have one of these. I was actually wearing. Here, I'm perfectly comfortable. You wait till you see the fact that I'm actually just wearing my swim trunks. I came up from the pool to do this broadcast. But we went to this lunch. The staff there were beautiful. The somm there was an absolutely gem of a man. It turns out that he's like one of the top ones in the world. This restaurant Doc was unbelievable. But when you said, I think I'm having duck 3 ways, it's made for 2 people, and without anybody else having a chance, Rebecca's like, oh yeah, me.
That was impressive, Rebecca. I remember that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was the home plate right there.
That trip is full of pictures that people took of me just being excited about the food that was put down in front of me.
Yeah, absolutely. But so duck would go well with this. So Doc, Joe, what do you think? What would you guys pair?
I will say this: you and Jody need to stop by the winery tomorrow at noon because Michael is bringing out his first pass at a beef bourguignon.
Oh.
And I think beef bourguignon with this would be fab.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I will be there
for the meeting, but I will pass on the.
You got to come for lunch, and you got to bring Jody.
Okay. I will see if she's available, but I would love the beef bourguignon, but I will be there for the meeting. It'll be wonderful to smell. So beef bourguignon, you think this wine?
That's what I think.
Okay, Joe?
The other thought I had was at the grill here in Leon Springs, one of the very first entrees on Thierry's list is a soy glazed Chilean sea bass.
Oh, boy.
Which, you know, it's this wine makes me think about that.
Wow, that sounds stellar. That absolutely sounds stellar. You know, Crystal kind of stole my thunder a little bit there. I wasn't going to say.
I did?
Yes, you did.
What?
But so I'm trying to furiously come. Actually, just about anything would go with this. I'm going to go for the dessert end of life on this. No, you cannot mute yourself, Crystal. So, I had to go for the dessert end of life on this, and I'm going to go and say that this would be beautiful with a chocolate creme brulee. That's what I'm thinking. That a really rich dessert would do well with this. So,
Are you really hungry now?
no, not really. I had some water before this, and yeah. I'm hamming it up for this. I am perfectly fine. So I don't see any more questions really scrolling through here. So I think this will probably be an opportune time to go ahead and wrap things up for another broadcast. But before we do, I want to mention for next week that
Can I throw in one thing? So tomorrow, my assistant virtual tasting director turns 3.
Oh, yes?
Nick. So I just want to say happy birthday to Nicholas because I know he's watching.
Well,
Probably
here's Nicholas. Happy birthday, buddy. Look forward to seeing you again at the winery soon. So next week, we have, on Monday, we have the 2018 Petite Syrah. On Wednesday, we have the 2014 Chivot Noir.
John, that's 2 weeks from now.
Oh, that's 2 weeks, week 18. Sorry, I apologize. I got the note from Brett. I thought this was for next week. Next week, I remember now, are all the dolcettos.
I'm not usually allowed to talk from behind the bottle, so I was no. But I wasn't going to say anything, but now I can.
Look, I do make mistakes on occasion, like if it's Monday through Sunday. So,
every now and then the bottle wants to talk, but
I've had that problem too, Crystal.
I know.
Well said.
So week 18, which will be not this coming week, the following week, will be the Petite Syrah 18, the 14 Chivot Noir, and the 14 Raven, which should be a stellar wine on Friday. That's our double gold Raven. So if y'all have not ordered the pack up yet, please do so. Let's get it to you. You've got a few days yet, of course. But for next week, we're doing all three. We're doing 3 of the vintages of Dolcetto. We're doing the 15, the 17, and the 18 Dolcetto next week. So that'll be fun. So Jet, if you're still out there, we're definitely going to give you a little ration over the Dolcettos. But also,
I think Jet just transferred to SMU.
Oh man, he earlier, Doc, he said, "Oh wow, it's on." Basically, like you're. Yet I have nothing to do with this.
We need his former teacher, Mrs. Canada, on here to have some comments on this.
Right? Yeah, to get him. It's funny when she says something, he always perks up. All righty. I want to thank everybody out there for joining us again and for allowing us in your lives for 30 to 40 minutes, and hope we brought you some cheer and some joy. May you have an absolutely fabulous weekend. So to everyone, good wine, good health. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Oh.